I think in my case, it's one thing for the incumbent to not show up to candidate forums, as you described, is what's been happening. But it's another for the incumbent to not show up to city council meetings, to committee meetings, and that's something that has happened time and time again. This term, I know it's happened before in previous terms, but this term our incumbent missed 57 city council meetings. It's roughly 20% of council and committee meetings. And to me, that's what's unacceptable. It's like, I get it, it's political season. You don't want to put yourself out and open yourself up to criticism, but I think at the end of the day, you at least should show up to work. And so I think what people see in whether it's me coming to these candidate forums, whether it's me out knocking on doors, whether it's me calling folks, whether it's me writing postcards to personally ask people for their vote or their support, is that the work that you see coming from me in my campaign is the work you're going to get out of me if elected. And I think that's why we are neck and neck with the 28-year incumbent with the general election results. And I think that's why we've gotten so much community support from people who have either been born or raised their kids or grandkids in our community, or people who have voted for the incumbent in previous election cycles who are ready for a change. I think that's why you're seeing that change happen right now, is because people see that difference and people recognize that the barbecues and the food giveaways and things like that only come once every 4 years are gimmicks and don't really get at address the needs of the people. And I think people are ready for a change, and I think that's what you're seeing right now.
How about for you?
So I don't agree with you right there. I think my opponent, she's begging for a chance to debate and go to a forum with me. We actually had 2 this week, but only if she can read the questions first, and only if she can put people in the audience to ask buzzword type questions, like what gang are you in, or how long have you been in a gang, or what's your deepest, darkest secret, Antonio, because we're gonna find out.
Has that question been asked to you?
All of them, all 3, in order. They actually, I got invited to one event in which they asked me not to bring anybody with me. I got invited to a house event, a house party, told me not to bring anybody with me, unless maybe one person. And about 20 people there, they told me not to share the address where I was going. And the questions I would ask was, what gang are you in? And I'm a black man from Atlanta who has never been asked that question in his life. Never in my life have I been asked those questions. But yeah, if she can't throw buzzwords around, she's not coming, but she's begging for an opportunity to debate and be in a room with me, but only if she could do that. Because she needs the folks. You know what I'm saying?
So why do you think folks continue to vote for her? There's clearly been some like contribution to the community. There are people who believe that Councilmember Shepherd has been a staunch advocate for their community. There is a group of people who believe that. The votes were not so overwhelmingly in one way or another. So why do you think those folks believe that? And what do you say to someone who says, Antonio, I think you're great, but this is my representative, and she's been there for a long time. How do you have that conversation with someone who might feel that you don't really know the real Joyce Shepherd?
Yeah, and Joyce has been around for a long time. A lot of folks over there know her and they like her, particularly in the Capitol View area where the improvement has happened the most. But then you walk around the rest of the district, same people, they've known her for the same amount of time period. These are folks that she started off in the streets with, working hard for other people to get elected. She started off in the streets with them at the NPU level. When you think about the labor unions, I got most of the labor support. She's a labor candidate. They're switching on her. She's losing a lot of support simply because she just hasn't been around. And so the folks who still voting for her, the way she's basically attacked me during this entire campaign was to try to hide me and then use buzzwords. When we meet them, we're just being authentic, fully authentic. Even our candidate, Joyce Shepherd, she's quoted in the newspaper as saying we need change in our district. She said we need new ideas. She said we need new leadership. She said that. So she just wants to choose the person. You get what I'm saying? So.
Thank you. Keisha, wanted to ask you, the candidate that you're running against was supposed to be here tonight, Jackie Labatt, She did not show up tonight. Is that something that has happened often, or is that kind of usually you have had discourse with the other candidate? If the answer is yes, you have had discourse with the other candidate, what differentiates you? Would love to know kind of the main thing that voters should know is a big differentiating factor for you. And if you have not had that engagement, why or why not? Do you think the reason is for that?
So no, I have not seen that. I've seen Mrs. Labat attend most of the forums that we've been present at, and frankly, we still live within a pandemic. She's married to a husband that's a very busy man. But more importantly, I'd like to talk about why I'm here tonight and why this event was important to me.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sure. So tonight I've heard a number of issues that I thought were extremely important to speak to, and thank you again for hosting in the forum. Affordable housing to me is extremely important. I am the daughter of a single parent, and like my colleagues, I've seen Atlanta through several different lenses. I'm very concerned about my neighbors in the community that I live in, which is actually in District 12. And due to the spiking taxes and rising property taxes, although those are some things we're excited about, I'm deeply concerned that many of them won't be able to remain here. And I believe that that's one of the reasons it's going to be so important, I think, running citywide, to have some level of policy experience, because you're going to have some relationships. And I bring those with my former colleagues, having served in the House. I'm very interested in creating policy to cap taxes for seniors as well as legacy residents without bankrupting our school system. As you're aware of, the majority of our taxes go to our school system. So those are some things that concern me. And also public safety came up tonight in terms of cutting, which I do not support, cutting the public safety budget, but I do think this is an opportunity to utilize the infrastructural dollars that are coming down to expand our camera network and make sure that they're integrated into the 911 center, which is, at this time, is a challenge for us.
Got it. One thing, last time you were here for our candidate forum, we talked a bit about the detention center that exists. You know, I think this is an interesting conversation to have with the three of you, because when we asked you the question, Jason, you said, close it down, like shut it down, demolish it. I think your exact words was, I would demolish it. And Antonio, you spoke to closing it down, that it's not currently doing what it is supposed to do. And then Keisha, you had mentioned that we might need to be more open to a conversation with the county to utilize it for facilities. So where we're at now in the process is that the building has not been demolished. The building has not been shut down. The building is also not being used for a utilization of additional beds. It's currently, there is a utilization now of the building to be done, some programming on one floor.
Yes.
So my question to you, and I'll start with you, Keisha, is what should happen on the other floors? Is it additional programming? Is it actually utilizing that to jail folks? What is the usage that should happen on those additional floors?
All right, thank you for the question. So as many of you are aware, we wrote a $6 million check, I think, to Cobb County to house inmates. And so that's a tax bill that all of us pick up. And so certainly we have a need. With respect to the detention center, I think there's some interesting opportunities. We're all intimately aware of the homeless population issues that we're having. And given the infrastructure dollars that are coming down, I think this is an amazing opportunity to repurpose the building for, one, affordable housing opportunities for seniors and legacy residents, but also, more importantly, to tackle the homeless issue, which it's my understanding the bulk of that is probably going to be mental health issues. So I think we have an opportunity to partner, one, with the feds, the state, as well as utilize some of these dollars to truly get at the crevice of some of these issues.
So how would you utilize the particular facility for what it is that you're talking about?
Sure. So to repurpose a building certainly is not cheap. And given these funds that are coming down, I think there's an opportunity to leverage those dollars. So one, providing housing, direct housing to individuals who have challenges with homelessness. Secondly, what I'd like to do is to We've had a conversation for a long time about affordable housing. I talked the last time I came here about the 17 public housing units that were taken offline with the purpose of bringing them back online for multi-families and low-income families. I think this is an opportunity to do that with respect to this building by providing wraparound services for drug treatment, for mental health services, and all of these can be housed in one location with a close proximity to where these individuals are currently living, where we can actually provide wraparound services.
Can you clarify your position on whether you would vote for the utilization of the facility in any way, shape, or form to house, folks who are at human beings at Fulton County to operate as a jail in any way, shape, or form? Mm-hmm. Is that something you think we have an obligation to do, that we should do? Mm-hmm. Would love you to clarify that.
Absolutely. Well, I think we can have a short-term conversation, but it's my understanding that the building is not usable right now. It's dilapidated and unusable in terms of human capacity.
Actually quite the opposite, right? Which is that it's a very usable facility. The facility, though, is unclear on how it will be used. A number of advocates pushed for it to be used for the services that are now being introduced. They pushed for that years ago, but now that's starting to be introduced. But there's been a lot of conversation on us entering a contract relationship with Fulton County to be able to house overflow, quote unquote, from Fulton County into this detention center. So that was my understanding, but want to see whether you believe this facility should be used as a detention center or not.
I'm happy to speak to that. Short term, given the $6 million check that we've written to Cobb County, certainly I would entertain that on a short-term basis. However, long-term, I'd like to see the facility repurposed for the usage of homeless individuals as well as providing wraparound services to our communities.
Got it. Okay. Would you, Jason, would you get on council and push for, even though that there's programming happening, do you think we need to expand programming, or do we need to demolish the building still?
So I still support demolishing the building. I'm glad there's programming. To me, that's a stopgap solution. I know that was kind of where two really opposing interests had a compromise, which I'm glad that the programming is happening. But I wanted to demolish it because incarceration is a traumatizing experience for a lot of people. And when you take someone still needs help, who has to go back to that same building that they were locked up, they're not gonna get as much help as they could get if it was a new facility that was directly focused on getting them the help that they need. And I appreciate that, Moki. And I think a lot about the fact that in many cases, it's more expensive to try to remodel or to adapt something that was built with a very specific use than it is to tear down and build it anew. It's like parking decks, for instance. If you it's hard to convert a parking deck into new housing, which is why don't approve parking decks in your neighborhood, because if you want it to be something different, then it's hard to do that. Yep. A jail with no windows, with the facilities built the way it is, it's hard to make it something new. So let's tear it down, build something new, use that same location, tie it into Garnett MARTA Station, tie it into the new developments that are happening with Centennial Yards and along Whitehall Street, and make it something that can be a centerpiece for this city, especially in a part of the city that needs the investment. Yep. And I would still tear it down, but I recognize that the current solution is, to me, is a stopgap solution. We should imagine something better. Got it.
Keisha, if Jason was on council and introduced, a proposal to tear down the building, would you support it?
I would like to see the fiscal note before doing
it. Okay, but it is something in concept you could see as a possibility.
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay, Antonio, where do you stand on this? Where do you think is important?
Yeah, I've grown. I don't think we should tear it down because of I think that the fiscal note would just be kind of high, especially when we think about the things we can do with the building. But I would never let them use it for housing criminals or let them use it for ICE again. When we think about some of the people that have been canvassing for me these past couple of days, we ran into some folks from a Latino organization, and I said, hey, what made you all endorse the Antonio Lewis campaign? Because I didn't fill out an endorsement sheet. I didn't do anything for you. They said, hey, you believe that this building needs to be repurposed in a different way. And they told me that they housed ICE in that building. So we definitely need to do other things with it. Some of the things I would want to do with it are, I think I mentioned this last time, in Denver, Colorado, they have something called a drunk tank. It's a Denver's Cares. They basically have a building in which if you are pulled over for being intoxicated, things that we don't think the police should handle, the 411 calls, 311 calls, you go to this Denver drunk tank for 24 hours, and they let you sober up, then they let you leave. That's something that we need in the city of Atlanta. Another thing we need in the city of Atlanta is, another thing we can use this building for is, we talk a lot about federal funding coming in. I think I'm one of the only people who's actually worked on Capitol Hill well, I think he mentioned he worked on Capitol Hill as well in D.C. So I worked on Capitol Hill for Congressman Lacy Clay Jr., so I've had a experience with federal dollars before. And some of the federal dollars that we see coming in are in the Build Back Better bill. The Build Back Better bill will help police, the PAD, will help PAD in different ways, because it actually expands Medicaid and Medicare in the state of Georgia, which gives PAD access to grant money that was not available before. So I think PAD should be in that building, and I think that grant funding would actually help them.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually want to hand it over to you, Moki, to be able to, a lot of these folks talk about PAD. Everybody wants to talk about PAD. PAD is the popular thing for every candidate to talk about, like, oh, I will expand PAD. And I think, not that was disingenuous. That was not a slant to any one of you. It's more of other candidates who have used it to dodge questions sometimes, none of whom are here today. They don't come. So but the question for you is, I would love for you to ask the question about making sure that these candidates have an understanding of the work that you are doing at PAD, but also, what is something that will help you understand whether they will actually be an ally for the work that you've helped build over there?
Do you want me to stand?
You're more than welcome to come up here if you'd like.
Okay, all right. I was getting really comfortable as an audience member. Thank you, Rohit. Moki Macias, Executive Director for Policing Alternatives and Diversion, affectionately known as PAD. I appreciate, I think we have built a lot of political will amongst our elected officials, as well as community, for alternatives to policing through our partnership with 311, so folks can call 311 instead of 911 if they require assistance with a quality of life type of concern, and also for diverting people from arrest when there is probable cause and officers make that decision, right? I think what we are challenged with now is that we have pulled something off citywide for the last year. I want to shout out to the PAD team, which is all of 10 responders citywide, right? Who respond to these 311 calls, who respond to officers who make a diversion to PAD instead of bringing somebody to Fulton County Jail or ACDC. But we have 10 people, right, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. That is a result of an investment from the city, investment from private philanthropy, right? We have $1.5 million from the city.
Not enough.
We are raising still another $3 million to be able to pay people, right, to be able to do this work. I think our biggest concern at this point is, how do we scale this to make it a real option, and how do we make it sustainable? And so my question for the candidates would be, what would your strategy be to ensure a sustainable, dedicated funding stream for alternative responses? And not just PAD. PAD is not the be-all, end-all solution, right? We've got Cure Violence. We've got AVLF now about to pilot a program. We've got organizations who are doing the work every day and who I think could scale, right? Who could, with their own particular expertise, provide response teams that would respond to community needs. But we do not have any sort of funding stream from the city to do that. So that would be my question, is how would you do that?
Thank you. Appreciate it. So if you could respond to that, that will be our closing question here, and then we'll move to our last conversation for today. So I'll start with you, Keisha. Go ahead.
So I think when you look at the cost of housing inmates in terms of medical, in terms of food, all of these different conversations, I think that there's an expense to housing individuals versus making them productive to citizens here in society. So one, I think there we can look at the fiscal note in terms of reducing the number of inmates that we're housing by diverting them from crime into something else. And then secondly, the other piece that I'd like to talk about is how do we streamline, and that is how do we partner with our county, our state, as well as our federal partners to streamline some of the work that we're already doing. I talked about a mental health component. Here in the state of Georgia, specifically in Atlanta, we closed a mental health facility about 20 years ago right over here off of Moreland Avenue. What I'd like to do is to solicit more federal and state funds to utilize some of these particular opportunities specific to this detention center to provide housing for individuals who are struggling with mental health issues as well. So I think that that's one of the things that we can do in terms of diverting those costs from individuals who we're housing as inmates, is to look at those same funds when we talk about versus defunding the police, is to divert some of those funding to the PAD. Secondly, when we talk about, I think we said 33% of our budget goes toward policing. That's, I think, is an opportunity where we can divert some of those funds as well. So thank you for the work that you do.
Okay. Antonio?
You got me as I was typing my notes, right? As I was writing my notes, I had something for you too. So I would, once again, work with federal and state partners. Build Back Better is going to do wonderful things for PAD because it expands Medicaid in the state of Georgia, something that our governor promised to do for us, but he never did it. It expands us for the ACA, which just opens up federal grant dollars. Another thing we have to do in the city of Atlanta is we actually have to hire a dedicated staff person to the Public Safety Committee. The Public Safety Committee has a staff person that is sharing with another committee, and that means that to me, the legislative aid, the staff person is the legislative aid. Their job is to actually go and find grants. That position just hasn't been filled. It's a person who's splitting their time with another committee. And so I would hire someone dedicated to that position. I believe in hiring legislative people for legislative positions. The city of Atlanta for a long time, we're a big city. We're a small town masking as a big city. It's time that we actually fill positions and start moving how we're supposed to move. So I would hire somebody to that position, which will directly make connections with DC and get in some federal dollars for PAD.
Got it. Jason?
I think what was said about interjurisdictional partnerships, relationships is a key part of it. The state beats Atlanta up because of this public safety challenge that we have. It's a regional challenge, it's a state challenge, it's a national challenge, but this is apparently Atlanta's challenge to solve on its own. And I think that we need to make sure our lobbyists that we are paying good money to are working with the state to make sure we have resources to address this in a much more meaningful and holistic way. So making sure that there's revenue streams from the state is a critical part of that, but also making sure we have revenue streams from the county as well. The county has a public health mandate, and a lot of work that you and your team are doing are tied to public health and public wellness, and we need to make sure we have funding streams for that. But one of the things I think it might be an interesting way to address this is the fact that we have additional resources through changes that we've made to how we handle impact fees in the city. The revenue projections from that are about 3 times what we were getting per year than what we were getting before. And I think there's some opportunities to make sure we can find additional solutions and additional funding streams through that mechanism. Because as we have all this development that's happening in our communities, usually it's that those developers or those people in those communities are the ones that are saying, hey, we have too many homeless people here, so I don't want to build in South Downtown. Hey, I don't want to do this in this community because I'm afraid of these public safety challenges. So it's all tied together. And I think that if we address it through these broader revenue streams and not just be relying on one thing to get your program funded, we're not going to run into an issue where when we hit the next recession, then all of a sudden we have no pre-arrest diversion program because the one funding stream that we had is going away. We have to diversify as best as possible so we're more risk averse or more risks. The word, it's late, so I'm not thinking of the specific word I'm looking
Tolerant.
for.
Yeah.
There you go. We need to be more risk tolerant, and we need to, that's it.
Last question for you, Keisha, is I was going to ask this of Ms. Labatt as well. So Ms. Waites, I want to know, with Ms. Labatt, we looked at financial disclosures, and we've been doing that for everyone. We've seen a lot of, questions of, okay, if there is a lot of support from certain places, then maybe that's going to imply influence, a previous conversation that we had before, and I'm sure she could speak to where her position is on that. But for you, we don't have anything reported. Why is it that we don't have any financial reporting from your particular campaign? Is it because your campaign has not raised money or that it has not spent money? Or is it that you plan to file differently? What is but right now we have no financial disclosure on you. What is that? Is that a discrepancy?
Actually, I actually filed the disclosure. If you notice, I reported 0. So it's actually been filed.
So you have not spent anything or raised anything?
Well, what I was going to express to you is that we've asked for information from some of our donors at the larger fundraisers that we've held, and they're very specific in terms of employer, address, and various pieces of information. And we have not been able to obtain that from some of the ones that we had at the larger fundraisers. So nonetheless, we will be amending the report, but we did actually file a report.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the question. All right. I appreciate it. Can y'all give, yeah, go ahead.
I like whenever they talk about money, right? Because we outraised the competitors, but we didn't accept money from developers. We unbossed. We're unbought and unbossed. So I like when we talk about money.
Yeah,
Thank
let's
you.
talk about money. We've got to make sure we can see it, which is very, very important. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate y'all.